Greetings, my fearless frontliners, my fellow guardians of the galleries. I'm William Young, and this is my channel. Today, we're going to talk about something that has been driving me absolutely crazy. People walking themselves out the door, people tricking off their job because they are running out of time, burning through their earned benefits. I'm talking about sick time. I'm talking about vacation time. I'm talking about comp time, the benefits that are literally given to you by your agency, the county, the state, the federal government. And yet I keep hearing about and seeing people burn through them way too fast, right? Especially sick time, only to find themselves in a real life crisis with nothing left to cover it. You need time off. You should take time off. In fact, I tell people all the time, get out of the facility. Corrections is crazy. Corrections is relentless. And if you don't have time out, if you don't step away, you will burn out. But here's the deal. Are you using your leave time responsibly? Or are you setting yourself up for a situation when you really are going to need it and you've got nothing? This is so crazy. But before I dive into it, before I go any further, I have to thank the members of the Just Corrections Patreon community for their unwavering support, for supporting the channel, for supporting the video. Without them, without you, I could not create the content that I create. I appreciate you all. And if you're watching, if you're listening and you'd like to contribute to support the channel, I'll throw the link in the description below. But if you'd rather just buy a super thanks, you can do that by hitting the little thank you button right below me. So let's talk about this, right? One of the main elements that I talk about that leads to burnout is the amount of time that we're exposed to the correctional environment. So I understand the need, and I encourage people to use those benefits appropriately, right? Use your vacation time. Use your comp time if you get it. Use your sick time when you need it. But here's the deal. Do you really need it? Because at some point, you will actually need it. And I'm not talking about sick time like you got a runny nose or a fever. I'm talking about getting hurt. I'm talking about getting injured. I'm talking about having shoulder surgery or knee surgery, which if you're working in corrections, it's coming, right? You know, some of you are in your 20s and 30s and you may not get it yet, but if you're in your 40s or 50s, you know what I'm talking about. Something is coming. A heart attack, a birth of a child, the death of a relative. And a lot of agencies give you a certain amount of days. So for instance, if your mother or father die in some places, you get 3 days or 5 days or whatever. And that's not enough. I took a couple of weeks after my mother died, after my mother passed, and I was able to take the leave time and then use my own time. They gave me the opportunity to extend that out, to extend my funeral leave. And I appreciate that with my own benefits. That was really great. But what I've seen a lot lately, and what I'm getting emails about from people all over the country, from both from people on both ends, right? From managers, frontline supervisors who are being forced to write up people for going over on their sick time, for being negative on their sick leave balance because they had real life stuff happen, because they have sort of, nickel and dimed their way through their sick time, and they no longer have the leave to cover it when they really need it. And it's frustrating. It's disheartening to have to discipline somebody when you know that they're going through something. It's incredibly stressful on them. And on the flip side of that coin, as a staff member who at some point really needs the time, you have a family member pass, you have the birth of a child, you need the surgery that I was talking about, shoulder, knee, ankle, whatever. And now you have that additional layer of stress because you don't have the time to cover the time off that you need. And now you're putting your job in jeopardy because you actually need to be off, man. Folks, that's not a good way. There's not a way to say this. I'm sorry, that doesn't sound preachy, but I'm not trying to do that. What I'm trying to tell you is this: corrections is a great career. It's a good career. It's a career that will always be there if you do a couple of things. It really boils down to like 3 things, right? Don't smuggle in contraband. Don't have inappropriate relationships with an inmate, and then show up to work when you're supposed to show up to work. And I know that there are agencies that allow you to build up comp, to take vacation time, and you can accrue like a vulgar amount of time and take time off, and that's great. I want you to do all of that because that's how you get out and clear your head. That's how you enjoy life. But let me give you an example of something that happened when we had happened recently at our facility. We had for years a ridiculously insane amount of overtime available for like a decade, right? And officers were able to build up the compensatory time, comp time, like it was nothing, like it was just laying around on the floor, right? Overtime was everywhere. And you were getting forced overtime, which means you could take it for comp time and then take that for time off and so on and so forth. So at vacation bid, when we put in for time off. Officers were able to put in for weeks, hundreds of hours of time off, and because they had it, because they grew so accustomed to having that time off, to working 3-day weeks, to working 4-day weeks, or whatever it was, and now it's dried up. The overtime is gone, and we went on this massive hiring streak, which was great. We upped our wage. Anyways, long story short, officers got accustomed to having that time off, and then they were no longer able to fill that leave bank again. And so a lot of officers started tapping into their sick time and started calling in sick to be able to have the days off and to do all that. But here's the problem. Here's the problem with that, is that sick time doesn't accrue that quickly. It doesn't, you get it every paycheck, every pay cycle or whatever, but not as quickly as your comp time. And once that runs out, once you're out of it, you can always accrue more, but you're going to really need that sick time sometime moving forward. Look, things are going to happen in your life. There are going to be moments in your life when you can't get out of bed. There are going to be moments in your life where you can't mentally be in the facility, and that's fine. I don't want you to be at work if you're not okay to be at work. And for me, that's physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, whatever. I just need you to understand something, that if you don't use your leave time sparingly, responsibly, you may find yourself in a predicament down the road where you're facing disciplinary suspension time or termination, or getting wrote up for using your leave time or your vacation. So how can you minimize your need to use this? What life changes can you make to minimize your need to take sick time? Well, that's where the wellness part comes in, right? That's where the part where I do preach a little bit comes in. And after the break, we're going to talk about it. Do you guys ever feel like this job is changing you, like the weight of the walls are pressing in and you're not necessarily the same person who walked through those gates? Well, you're not imagining things. Corrections, the training, the trauma, the time that we spend inside rewires the way we think, react, and the way we see the world. And that's exactly why I wrote my new book, Train to Change: The Unfortunate and Unintentional Consequences of the Correctional Curriculum. It's a deep dive into how this career shapes us mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, and more important, how we take back control. So whether you're a rookie or a veteran, this book right here, this tool, will help you recognize the hidden impacts of the job and give you the tools to push back, stay sharp, and protect your well-being if you're in this profession, or you know somebody who is. Grab this book, read this book, use this book as a tool to educate and elevate yourself and the profession. Get your copy of Train to Change today, available on Amazon. I'll throw the link in the description. Start taking control of your story today. And hey, if you've already read it, leave me a review and let me know what you think. Let's start changing the conversation about mental health and corrections, normalizing the conversation in mental health and corrections together. So what life changes can you make to minimize your need to take sick time? Well, that's where the wellness part comes in. That's where intentionally taking care of yourself comes in. Eating well, moving around, getting up off the couch, spending time with friends and family, getting as good a sleep as you can get when you can get it, right? And that's when that all comes into play. And the better you feel, the less likely you'll be to call in. And here's the other part about calling into work. Maybe you're calling into work because you're miserable, right? But maybe you could shift your focus. Maybe you could shift your perspective. Do some things that I talk about, that I've written about, in that negative space, to try to find purpose in what you do, so you can find that value in what you do, so you want to come in. So it's not just like a matter of forget this place, I don't want to do it today, right? You're going to have those days, and I'm not saying that, but what I'm saying is let's minimize those days, because you're going to have that day where it's not like, forget this place, I don't want to come in, but man, forget this place, I can't come in, right? You see what I'm saying? You see the difference? And I've been a part of conversations, very, very sad conversations, difficult conversations, where an officer is in trouble, where an officer is facing loss of wage, facing discipline because their sick time balance. And that is something that we can totally avoid in most cases. Not all cases. I get it, folks. Life happens, but there are mechanisms in place. There is FMLA, the Family Medical Leave Act, and you can apply for that. And there's some places that have like emergency vacation. Some places you can get a leave of absence. There are avenues. There are mechanisms in place. You just have to let your agency know. You just have to let people know what's going on in your life before you get to the point where you're disciplined, before you're facing discipline, before you get to the point where you're sitting in front of internal affairs trying to explain to them what's going on with your family and why you haven't been able to come into work. Because if they know, they can help you. If they know that when that report comes across their desk, they will deal with it differently. They can deal with it differently. Again, folks, I'm not I'm not placing judgment here. I'm not trying to sound preachy. I'm very pro yourself. I'm very advocate for yourself. I'm very, put the power back on you and whatever you can do to avoid the judgment, the investigation, that predicament. And I want you to think for a minute about the stress that you're under when you have an event in your life, like a death or a sick child. I had to call in sick one time because my dog died. We had to put my dog down, and I was beside myself, and I had to call in sick. And then but I had the sick time to cover, and I brought in the paperwork and everything. But I wanted everybody to know what was happening because it was important to me. All right. So if you have an event, and then you have that extra layer of stress, right? Like you have this, oh shit, I have this event. And now like, oh shit, I'm going to get in trouble on top of this. How am I going to explain this or how am I going to pay for this, right? Because maybe they say, you know what? I got a sick kid. You say, look, I got a sick kid and I don't care. I'm not coming in and I don't have the sick time to cover it, but I got to handle my business. And that's fine. But now you're like, oh man, they're going to grant me leave without pay and that's great. But now you have the event. Now you have the worry kind of about the disciplinary, but you've got that covered because they're going to give you sick without pay. But now you're going 2 weeks without paycheck. What are you going to do? You have additional stress, additional layers, right? Do you see that? Guys, what I'm saying is this. In corrections, we train you. We train you to forecast all of the possible things that can happen, all of the worst case scenarios. So let's do some of this in your life. Let's do some of this when you're looking at your leave bank and you see, you got like a couple of 100 hours of sick time in there, and that's great. And I'm going to make sure, that I'm going to go to every home football game come hell or high water. But hang on a second. What happens if your elderly parent falls and you need to take care of them? What happens if that scan that you just did at the doctor's comes back and it's maybe not so good? What would happen if you use your prediction powers, right, for good instead of evil this time and keep a little in the bank? Keep a rainy day fund, if you will, because if you stay in corrections long enough, there will be rainy days. You are going to need your sick time to take time off. Look, take your time off, take your vacation, get out of this place, quit working your weekends. That's the one thing I tell people. Stop working your weekends. If you don't have to be at the facility, don't be at the facility. You'll get burned out if you are constantly working overtime. And I get it. Some facilities don't have, those protections in place, those mechanisms in place. So you have to say, you have to stay when they say stay, and that's fine. But there are times that they can't keep you, right? You don't have to live there. There are times when you can be at home. And those are the times where you need to choose to be at home. And when you do that, when you are at home, when you could be at home, then you need to get out in the world. You need to feel like the moments that you're not in uniform have value when you're experiencing life, when you're not just sitting on your couch, watching shows about prison and jail. Then your time means something, right? And you feel good and you feel like you're ready to get back to work. And if you don't, right, and you're calling in sick because you don't want to work there, because maybe you're scared, because maybe this job is not for you, because maybe somebody has threatened you, or whatever the reason is, then that's fine, right? Start putting in applications at other places. Start exploring other options and talk to somebody. Talk to your wellness coordinator, talk to your peer support team or coordinator, talk to a mentor, somebody that you trust in the facility, talk to your administration. Most of them have an open door policy, right? Just go talk to them. I laugh when I say that, open door policy, because I know that I'll get some comments in the comment section about their admin not having an open door policy, and they'll completely miss everything else I said in this video. But, we'll talk about that some other time. The point is, look, and I'm going to land this plane for you guys. The point is, we understand as a profession that this job can do things to you, that there are days and there are moments that you're going to miss and that you don't want to be here. And you need to get your head out of this place for a while. And I understand that there are mechanisms in place, and that's why they give you the leave time. That's why there's FMLA. That's why there's all these things here. But also there's things that you need to do, that you need to take care of so that you can manage your life and your time and maintain your employment. Guys, it's doable. A lot of us do it. It's doable. Look, there are a lot of jobs out there, and I'm going to get on a bit of a soapbox here for a second and then get off. But there are a lot of jobs out there where people fight for 14 days of PTO a year. They get like maybe 2 weeks of vacation a year, or maybe like a total of 2 weeks PTO, whatever it is, and that's it. And most correctional facilities that I have heard about, that I have experience with, most officers and staff members that I have talked to get a lot more time than that, a lot more days than 14. And that's good. You need it. You need it, but you have to use it responsibly, sparingly. You have to use it appropriately. You have to understand that, yeah, I don't want to be here today, but I don't want to be here tomorrow either. In fact, that's why I don't ever call in sick. I may be calling sick once or twice a year, maybe, but one of the reasons that I don't call in, because I can always find a reason to not be at work. If I call in sick today, then I'll call in sick tomorrow, and I'll just might as well never even come back. I would just rather sit on my couch and binge watch Netflix all day long, but I can't do that. That's not rational. That's not reasonable. So you have to shift your focus. You have to shift your focus and say, what is my ultimate goal? What's my priority? And your priority should be your happiness, your sanity, your family, your life outside of the facility, and the facility, your job, your paycheck. It funds that life. It funds your life. It allows you to do the things that you want to do, but to get that money, you have to show up. To not get in trouble, you have to show up. Sweet and simple. That's it. All right, guys, that's all I got. Thanks for hanging out with me today, for listening to this rant, for watching this rant, this episode of the podcast. New episodes are available daily, 4 p.m. Central Standard Time. Set a reminder on your phone, on your calendar. Click the link in the description. It'll put it right on your calendar so you never miss an episode. Subscribe to the show. Follow the show. Do whatever you want to do. Follow us on Facebook, X, LinkedIn, Instagram. Leave a comment. I want you to get involved. I want you to engage. Share the show. I want you to share the show with your friends, family, fellow correctional professionals, everybody. The Just Corrections podcast. And if you're interested in supporting the show, please consider becoming a member of the Just Corrections Patreon community. There are a couple of different tiers, different options, so make sure you check that out. I'll have a link to that in the description below. I'll also have a link to my books in the description below as well. They're both available on Amazon. And if you want to bring me out to speak or present at your event, send me an email at justcorrections.booking@gmail.com. All right, guys, that's all I got. That's enough for today. Whew. Until next time, be smart, stay safe, stay sane, and don't call in sick.